You ever sat at a railroad crossing in the middle of nowhere watching a 3-mile-long freight train rumble past like it was never going to end? Welcome to America. Now go ride a French bullet train at 200 miles per hour. Same invention, two planets. Here's why. The pickup truck with the driver in the bed. First big difference, you can spot it from a block away, the cab design. American locomotives have this weird look where the driver sits in a small box shoved all the way to one end of the thing, with a giant long hood stretching out in front. It looks like a pickup truck where the driver sits in the bed and the engine takes up the entire cab. Completely backwards from what your brain expects. European locomotives have cabs on both ends. Double the driver stations, double the visibility, double everything. Why the split? American trains go forever in one direction. A freight train leaving Los Angeles might not even blink until it hits Chicago. We're talking 2,000 miles of nothing but dirt, cows, and the occasional gas station. When it finally gets there, nobody's flipping the thing around like a pancake. They use a Y-track, which is a triangle of rails that lets the whole train do a slow-motion 3-point turn, or a turntable. Takes forever, but who cares when your cargo is sand? European cities are crammed together like passengers on a Chicago bus at rush hour. You pull into Brussels, you grab your passengers, and you need to leave going the opposite direction in about 4 minutes because Paris is basically next door. You can't waste time on turntables. So they build locomotives with drivers at both ends, or they use a push-pull setup where the engine lives at one end and either pushes or pulls depending on direction. Instant turnaround. Classic European efficiency. I've been on Amtrak trains that take longer to board than a European train takes to completely reverse direction. Walkways on the outside of a freight engine. Second crazy difference, and this one looks insane the first time you notice it. American freight locomotives have walkways on the outside. Actual little sidewalks running along the sides of the engine. Meanwhile, European locomotives are these smooth, sleek tubes that look like someone sanded them down in a wind tunnel. Not a bolt out of place. Like Apple designed them on a really good day. Why the walkways? Because an American engineer might genuinely need to step out and fix something in the middle of a 100-mile stretch of empty desert. Your train dies between Phoenix and Albuquerque. There is no AAA. No mechanic is coming for 3 hours, maybe longer if they have lunch first. You fix it yourself, or you sit there and think about your life decisions. So, they build these beasts with grab rails and catwalks so the crew can actually climb around the engine and poke at the guts while it's parked in the middle of Wyoming. European trains don't need that. If a TGV breaks down, help is basically around the corner. You could probably walk to the nearest cafe and be back with a croissant before the mechanic arrives. Also, European passenger trains hit 200 miles per hour on some lines. Aerodynamics matter a whole lot when you're moving that fast. American freight trains average 40 to 50 miles per hour across most of the country. Nobody cares about wind resistance at 40 miles per hour. They care about the train not snapping in half in the middle of North Dakota. While we're on the subject of size, American trains are physically bigger than European ones. Wider, taller, heavier in every dimension. The loading gauge, which is the size envelope the train has to fit through, is bigger in the US because our tracks were mostly built in more open country with fewer ancient tunnels to work around. That's why American boxcars can be double stacked with shipping containers, which is basically impossible on most European networks because tunnels and bridges there were built before anyone imagined stacking 2 containers on top of each other. Go ride a British train and then stand next to an American freight. You'll feel the size difference immediately. Our stuff is chunkier. It looks like it eats other trains for breakfast and leaves the bones. Who actually owns the tracks? Third difference, and this one Reddit will argue about until the heat depth of the universe. Who owns the tracks? In America, the tracks belong to the freight companies. Union Pacific, BNSF, Norfolk Southern. These private giants own the steel. They built it, they maintain it. They use it to haul 10,000-ton freight trains across the country every single day. Amtrak, our passenger service, basically rents space on those tracks like a tenant in a bad apartment. By law, Amtrak is supposed to get priority. On paper, passenger trains come first. In practice, Amtrak trains spend hours pulled onto side tracks watching 2-mile-long freight trains rumble past. Your vacation to see Grandma just got delayed 3 hours because a train full of soybeans had the right-of-way. Imagine paying hundreds of dollars for a ticket and losing half your day to cargo. That's the American rail experience in a single sentence. Europe is the complete flip. After World War II, European governments looked at their bombed-out rail networks and decided passenger trains were essential national infrastructure, like highways and hospitals. They built dedicated electrified lines just for people. No freight getting in the way. No slow cargo trains clogging up the system. Their trains own the tracks outright. When your passenger train's not sharing rails with a coal hauler going 35 miles per hour, suddenly you can hit speeds that would make your grandma reach for the oh crap handle. 19 hours to New York. Speaking of speed, let me show you what this actually means for taking a trip. This is where American rail fans start sweating in the comments. Chicago to New York on Amtrak takes about 19 hours. 19 hours for about 960 miles. That's an average speed of around 50 miles per hour. My grandpa drives faster than that on the highway in his old Buick with his glasses off. So what did Amtrak do about it? They leaned into the pain. They turned the train into a hotel. The Lakeshore Limited has sleeper roomettes, dining cars, and onboard showers. You board at night, you wake up the next morning somewhere in upstate New York, you drink coffee in a lounge, you watch the Hudson River roll by, and you cruise into Penn Station in the afternoon. It's basically a cruise ship on rails, and I'm not even mad about it. Europe, however, took the opposite approach. A comparable distance, say Paris to Barcelona or Madrid to Seville, takes about 3 hours on a TGV or AVE. You don't need a bed because you're not sleeping on the train. You don't need a shower because you arrive before you finish your podcast. Europeans built time machines. Americans built rolling hotels. Both are cool, but solve completely different problems. It is actually the entire point of this video. Couplers that make rail fans lose their minds. All right, time for the deep nerd stuff. Rail fans in the comments are about to melt their keyboards, so hang in there. Let's talk couplers. This is the thing that connects one train car to the next. American trains use these massive steel jaws called knuckle couplers. They look like two fists grabbing each other. Brutal. Engineered to handle the insane tension of pulling 10,000 tons of coal across an entire continent. You can slam two train cars together at like 4 miles per hour and the knuckles lock automatically. It's almost beautiful in a brutalist 90s action movie kind of way. The European and UK trains often still use a system called hook and chain. It's exactly what it sounds like. A guy, a real-live human being wearing a reflective vest, has to climb in between the cars and manually hook a chain onto the next car. In 2026. In a world where you can get groceries delivered by drone, Europeans are out there hand-hooking train cars like it's 1890. I watched a video of it and I physically hurt inside. Because the hook and chain setup isn't rigid. They need these iconic spring-loaded buffers on the ends of every car to stop the cars from smashing into each other when the train brakes or slows down. It looks weird, but it works for what they need. European trains are way lighter and way shorter than American freight, so they don't need the insane pulling strength of a knuckle coupler. They need finesse. Americans need force. Different jobs, different tools. Modern American freight trains also do this wild thing called distributed power, where they put locomotives in the front, middle, and sometimes the rear of the train, all remotely controlled from the lead unit. It spreads the pulling force across the whole train so nothing snaps. Imagine driving a car where the front, middle, and back are all powered at the same time. That's how you move 30,000 tons without ripping the train apart. The diesel versus electric showdown. Now let's talk power. The US relies almost entirely on massive diesel-electric locomotives. Think of them as giant generators on wheels. A huge diesel engine turns an alternator, the alternator makes electricity, and the electricity drives the wheels. Weird on paper, works incredibly well in practice. So why this setup? Because running overhead electric wires across 3,000 miles of empty American desert would cost an absolute fortune. There's no federal funding for mass electrification of freight rail in the US. So they just strap a 12,000 horsepower diesel onto the thing and call it a day. And they're heavy. A standard American freight locomotive weighs about 400,000 pounds. That's 200 tons for a single locomotive. The newer EMD SD70 ACE tips the scale at 408,000 pounds. The GE AC40 400 CW hits 426,000 pounds. These things are absolute tanks with steel wheels. Europe utilizes electrified tracks heavily. Overhead wires crisscross the whole continent like one giant extension cord. The trains are lighter, cleaner, and in France, more than 90% of rail traffic runs on electric power. They plug in like the world's biggest Tesla. Switzerland runs nearly 100% electric. Even the UK, which still has a lot of diesel operations, is aggressively electrifying everything they can. A Belgian Class 13 locomotive weighs about 90 tons. An American SD90 Mack weighs 188 tons. Same basic job, more than double the weight. Why? The American needs to drag a 10,000-ton freight train up a mountain pass without slipping a single wheel. The Belgian just needs to zip a small passenger train between cities at 125 miles per hour. Heavy means grip. Heavy means tonnage. It's basic physics taught in your 7th grade science class. Precision scheduled chaos. Which brings us to a spicy topic that Reddit and YouTube rail communities are currently obsessed with. Something called precision scheduled railroading, or PSR for short. Over the last 10 years or so, American freight companies got this idea that making trains way longer and way less frequent would save them money. They were right. It absolutely did save money. Wall Street loved it, and stock prices went up and up and up. But it also created absolute chaos. Trains are now so long, some stretch past 3 miles, that they block highway crossings for 20 minutes at a time. Kids are late to school. Ambulances have to reroute. Supply chain bottlenecks pile up at major hubs, and these PSR policies have been linked to a wave of derailments that keep making the news, including the one in East Palestine, Ohio that everyone still remembers. American freight is still the most efficient in the world by cost per ton mile. That's a real measurable fact that Europe can't even touch. This is exactly why every YouTube video that praises European passenger trains gets flooded with American comments going, "Yeah, but look at our freight." The US dominates globally in freight efficiency. Nobody moves cargo cheaper per ton mile than American railroads. The same obsession with efficiency that makes American freight unbeatable is also what makes American passenger rail such a disaster. Two sides of the exact same coin. The Deutsche Bahn reality check. While we're out here throwing cold water on things, let's completely destroy the myth of the perfect European rail system. If you think European trains are some kind of magical utopia where everything runs on time, you have clearly never met a German in 2026. Deutsche Bahn, the German national rail company, had the worst punctuality year in its history in 2025. Ready for this? Only about 60% of long-distance trains arrived on time for the whole year. In October of 2025, it dropped to 48%, less than half. Imagine if half the flights in America were delayed every single day. There'd be actual riots at LaGuardia. For comparison, Switzerland runs trains at 99% on time, France at 87%, Belgium at 96%, and even Austria clocks in at 81%. Germany is basically last in Western Europe. And the Germans know it. They are roasting Deutsche Bahn constantly. The company literally launched a mockumentary series on TikTok about how bad their own service is. Train crews singing and dancing about delays. That's how you know things are rough. Germans don't do self-deprecating comedy unless something is deeply, catastrophically broken. So the next time somebody tells you European rail is flawless, remind them that 70 million Germans are currently treating their own train system like an extended running joke. The new Deutsche Bahn CEO even admitted she can't fix it quickly, and the government is throwing over $100 billion at the problem through the end of the decade. The engine swap nobody talks about. One more crazy fact before we wrap this up. On the east coast of the United States, some Amtrak trains actually swap locomotives mid-route. No joke. They run electric locomotives into New York City because Penn Station has low ceilings, and diesel fumes underground would absolutely wreck everyone's lungs within about 10 minutes. Then they switch to diesel for the rest of the journey out to Chicago or wherever else the train's going. You can actually watch them change engines at specific stations. It's like a NASCAR pit stop for trains. It takes about 10 minutes, but it's a beautiful thing to witness if you're into that sort of thing. Europeans don't deal with this because electrified tracks run everywhere they need to go. The US has a Frankenstein rail system stitched together over 150 years of competing railroads, different priorities, and regional chaos. Some parts are electrified, some aren't. Some have big loading gauges, some have small ones, and every region thinks they do it the best. That's what makes American trains so weird and cool and frustrating all at the same time. They're the physical result of 150 years of wild decisions, private money, public neglect, geographic extremes, and engineering compromises baked into steel. Every locomotive tells that whole story, the sound of America versus the sound of Europe. One more fun one, the horns. American train horns are absurdly loud. Like, you can hear them at 3 in the morning from 4 miles away loud. Federal law requires them to blast at every single grade crossing, which means every time the tracks cross a road. Americans have tens of thousands of these crossings scattered all over the country. So trains are basically honking their way across America nonstop. If you've ever tried to sleep in a small town near a rail line, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The horn pattern is literally required by law. 2 long, 1 short, 1 long. It's basically a musical theme for every Midwest town. European trains are way quieter. Most of their passenger lines have 0 grade crossings. The tracks are fully fenced off, elevated, or tunneled. No crossing means no horns. The locomotives themselves run quieter because many are electric, so no big diesel engine growling away. A TGV passing through a village at 200 miles per hour sounds like a sharp whoosh, then gone. An American freight train rumbling through your town sounds like the apocalypse arrived and brought its own playlist. Both have their charm, but one of them definitely messes with your sleep schedule. Also worth mentioning, American locomotives have something called dynamic braking. When going downhill, the wheels become generators, converting motion into electricity, which is then burned off as heat through massive roof grids. This saves the regular brakes from burning out when stopping a 10,000-ton train on a mountain grade. European locomotives have something similar, but they often regenerate that energy back into the overhead wires for other trains to use. An American train going downhill wastes all that energy as heat. A European train going downhill is literally charging the grid for the train behind it. Now tell me that's not wild. The final verdict. 2 continents, 2 approaches, 2 feats of engineering. Americans built tanks that move freight cheaper than anywhere on Earth. Europeans built rockets that move people faster than anywhere on Earth. Which would you rather ride? A French bullet train or a rolling hotel crossing the American West? Let us know in the comments below.